Hello everyone, I'm Helene. Welcome to Cabin Fever Crochet for today's tutorial of the wishing well. It's a multi-seasonal convertible wrap into scarf, or you can make just a scarf, a more narrow one if you like. That is entirely up to you. This is an easy 2-row repeat pattern, very versatile. Make it as long, wide, tall, short, with or without fringe. And as always, I'm going to go through everything with you step by step. I do have a written pattern for this already in my Etsy shop. The link for that is below in the drop-down description section, along with everything else related that I'm mentioning today. The measurement of this one is a really long one at well over 6 feet, and it's by 16 inches tall from top to bottom. That is after I did just a light wet blocking, pinned it, let it dry. The blocking did make a big difference with this particular yarn that I used, and it added at least another 3 or more inches to the height of it. Now this fun little stitch I used a few tutorials back for my water, wine, tumbler bottle holder. I worked it at the round then, and I'd said I liked that stitch so much I was going to come back and do something else with it. So here it is, reworked a little bit differently. I added a really pretty lacy border around the bottom, another little simple edging to frame your face going around the neckline and down, and with a little bit of playful fringe, which I really like, but I'm going to show you how you can finish that side edging if you prefer not to have any. One other thing is I did use the two-tone method here that I showed in another tutorial recently, but you can work this in the usual way when you work a row back and forth. You chain up 3 as with a double crochet, turn your work across to the end. When you get to the end, then again chain 3, turn your work, and continue on back and forth. But I decided to include that two-tone method, a full-size project as I had mentioned, just so you can see how that all fits in and comes together. I also have a timestamp below, so if you just want to see how the stitch pattern is worked, you can certainly just fast forward and bypass the two-tone effect portion of it. I sure hope you had fun along with me during my little modeling session while I showed you a few ways how you can style and wear your scarf or wrap, minus of course the extra fringe trimmings on my top. Alright, so you will need a couple of stitch markers, so grab your yarn, hooks, and let's get started. Okay, so today I'm going to be working in Hobby Lobby's Fresh Haven yarn. It's 100% Tencel, a plant fiber pulp. It's very soft, has a beautiful natural sheen to it. It's on lighter weight, and it will have that really nice drape that I want for this particular stitch pattern and project. This color is light blue, and I'm going to use this for my focal point with the cluster stitches, and the contrasting color is iceberg. These are 3.5 ounce skeins, 180 yards, 165 meters per, the number 4 medium weight, and I'm going to be working with the suggested hook size on the ball band. So again, it's always helpful if you want to do a test swatch, see how this stitch pattern works up. You can always adjust your hook accordingly. So for this yarn, it calls for an I 5.5 millimeter. I will use that for the body of my work, and then I'm going up 1 hook size to a J 6 millimeter for the beginning foundation chain. Unless you're working with yarn that has no stretch to it whatsoever, then consider going up 2 hook sizes for that long beginning chain to avoid it from becoming over tightened and then your work winding up being more narrow along the top than it is at the bottom. So to begin, go ahead and make a slip knot with whichever method you prefer. Grab the larger of your 2 hooks, and we're going to make a long chain in multiples of 4 plus 9. which translates into making a chain in fours, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, all the way to your desired length and to any number that divides evenly by 4. And then you add the plus 9 more chains to the end of that. And the plus 9 is for our beginning turning chain and our double crochet borders at each end. Okay, and how long you make this, take into consideration how you plan to wear it. So if you, for example, would just like just a regular scarf, average length, then you chain to how you want the length to drape on your body. If you're making the convertible wrap into a scarf and want it the oversized so that you can double up and loop the scarf through, as I showed you the different ways to wear that at the beginning, then I suggest making the long chain to the length of your wingspan from fingertip to fingertip, where you have your arms spread out to the sides of your body stretched out. So you make a long chain that goes from fingertip to fingertip. You can always add in more chains or take some out as needed when you get to the end of your chain. Just be sure your multiples of 4 plus the 9 at the end are correct. I think it's always better to have it a little bit longer versus coming up short, but I always suggest double checking and even triple checking your stitch count. And also keep in mind, if you do plan to add fringe, then that's going to add to your overall length as well. Okay, so I am going to work my long chain, and I'll see you back here in just a minute. I'm back with my long chain of 160. Divided by 4 is 40 times, and then I added my plus 9 more chains at the end for a total of 169 chains. All right, so now take your larger of the two hooks, set that aside far away from you so you don't accidentally grab the wrong hook. And then when I'm switching, I anchor that last chain between my two fingers to make sure it doesn't accidentally get over tightened, so that when we make our first turning chain, that corner edge is more straight rather than pulling in. So now I'm switching to the hook for the main body of our work. Row 1 is our one and only setup row, and then our repeat rows will be rows 2 and 3. And now we're going to double crochet in the 4th chain from the hook, and those first 3 skipped chains do count as your first double crochet. And now we are going to place 1 more double crochet in each of the next 2 chains, which gives us a total of 4 double crochets, counting the first, okay, for our end border. Okay, and now we're going to chain 2, skip 1 stitch, single crochet into the next. Okay, chain 2, skip the next chain, and work a 2 double crochet cluster into the next as follows. So yarn over, insert your hook, pull up a loop. You have 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over, pull through the first 2. That is the first half of the cluster. Now again, yarn over, go back into the same stitch, pull up a loop, pull through the first 2, and now pull through all 3. Okay, go ahead, chain 2 more, skip the next chain, single crochet into the next, and this is our repeat for row 1. Chain 2, skip the next chain, and work another cluster into the next. Yarn over, insert your hook into the stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through the first 2, and now repeat that. Yarn over, insert your hook into the stitch, yarn over, pull up another loop. You have 4 loops on your hook. Yarn over, pull through the first 2, And now yarn over and pull through all 3. Okay, chain 2 again, skip the next chain, single crochet into the next. Okay, let's work this a couple more times. Alright, chain 2, skip the next stitch, cluster in the next, insert your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, again yarn over, insert your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through the first 2, yarn over, pull through all 3, chain 2, skip the next, single crochet in the next, chain 2, skip the next, cluster in the next, yarn over, insert your hook, pull up a loop, 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through the first 2, again yarn over, back into the same stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through the first 2, yarn over, pulling through all remaining 3 to complete that cluster, chain 2, skip the next, single crochet in the next, and you repeat that sequence all the way across up to the last 5 chains, and I will meet you at the end. We'll work that together. So you will always have a cluster in the center with 2 chains on either side, skipping only 1 chain after each stitch. Okay, and then you have your single crochet in between each cluster. Here I am at the end of our very long row 1, our setup row. You should have 5 chains left after your last single crochet. If for some reason you got off on your stitch count, as long as your stitch placement is correct, you have your single crochet cluster, single crochet cluster with 1 skipped chain in between each stitch, and your work looks good. Instead of taking all that out, what you can do is you can just pull back, take your slip knot out very carefully, and then pull back the extra stitches, making sure you have 5 chains left after that last single crochet. So when you pull back, be very careful, just make sure you re-knot it to the bottom and you have a good secure knot there, and then you don't pull back into one of the last 5 chains that we need to complete this row. Alright, so to complete this row, it's very easy. Chain 2, skip the next chain and place 1 double crochet in each of the last 4, and that will mirror our other end border of the 4 double crochet, counting your turning chain at the other end. Okay, so that should look the same at both ends. And now to row 2, the first row of our 2-row repeat, and this is where you have the option of either working this project in the usual way if you do not want to do the 2-tone technique of changing colors without having to cut your yarn. So if that's the case, then you leave your yarn attached, and then you will just turn your work and work across on the reverse side in the usual manner. So for the usual method, this row 1 is the right side, row 2 will be your wrong side. If you want to work the color changing method with me, you will have 2 right side rows followed by 2 wrong side rows, and they will be alternating 2 right, 2 wrong, 2 right, 2 wrong throughout. So for that method, you don't turn your work at this point. You will just draw up a long loop so you don't lose that, and then drop that loop, okay? And then get your 2 different colored stitch markers. Place 1 in the last stitch of this first row. You can make a note for yourself if you like to help you remember. Your loop row, the long loop row, is your turning row. You can write that down. Now go all the way to the end of your work. Make sure you are on the right side. Now get your second stitch marker and your new yarn. So your contrasting yarn, color B, main color, color A. We will be working on the right side of the work, but we're going to connect to the reverse side, then turn back to the right side and work across. Okay, so this is the top of your chain, beginning chain 3. That counted as your first double crochet, so turn the work and insert your hook through the top 2 loops of that chain. Bring your new yarn through, the tail end away from you, drape it over the hook and pull through like a yarn over. And then now you can chain 3, you can chain the first with both loops to lock that in, drop the loop, okay, and drop the tail end, and then now chain 2 more, turn the work, and then now place 1 double crochet in each of the next 3 double crochets. Okay, and the first chain 3 here and throughout will count as your first double crochet, and need to mark the top of that double crochet with your contrasting color. Go ahead and do so now, because when we get to the end of the next row, we're going to do something a little bit different, and that will help you keep track of your placement, how you work this method from each end. Okay, so now we're going to go back into pattern, row 2, still on the right side of the work. All right, this one's super easy. Just chain 5, jump all the way over to the first cluster. So you're skipping the chain 2, the single crochet in the next 2 chains, and into the top of the cluster, which is that elongated stitch that runs across the top, you're going to single crochet. Okay. Chain 5, single crochet into the next cluster, chain 5, and single crochet into the next cluster, and that is your repeat all the way across. Stop when you get to your last cluster, and I will meet you there, and we will finish the last stitches together. Okay, so again, all you do is chain 5, single crochet in the top of the cluster, chain 5, single crochet in the top of each cluster, and I will meet you at the last cluster stitch. I am back at the end of row 2 after I managed to knock over my water everywhere, got that cleaned up. Now we can finish this row together. So you should have single crocheted into your last cluster. Coming up on the end here, very easy. All you do is you chain 5 one more time, and then now you skip over to your first double crochet. So you're skipping the chain 2, the single crochet, and the next chain 2, and then you just place 1 double crochet in each of the next 3. And if you are working this pattern in the usual way, then you would just place 1 more double crochet into your last double crochet at the end. Okay. However, for the color changing method, so you can just pull that loop down a little bit, pull that out of the way, and then there's the top of the stitch, so you can take the stitch marker out for just a minute, and we're going to begin our double crochet as usual, and then we're going to change color, bringing in color A through the loop. So yarn over, insert your hook into the stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through the first two like you do in a normal crochet, but instead of yarning over, pulling through the last two to complete the stitch, we're going to do so by just placing the loop over the hook as a yarn over and pulling through. Do not over tighten that either, just keep that nice and fluid, as I like to call it. Now we have our new yarn going back to color A that we pulled through, and color B, our contrasting yarn, we've dropped. But we want to carry that up as we begin the first stitch of the next row, so that when we come back and work with this yarn again on the following row, that it will be up to the height where we need it to be. So we're going to go ahead and turn our work, and then you take the color that you dropped, place it over top of the color you're now working with, and make your first chain. And then you will do that 2 more times to complete your chain 3, which counts as your first double crochet of this new row. Alright, so from back to front, over top of your working yarn, go ahead and chain 1, and then do that 1 more time from back to front, over top of your working yarn to complete this stitch. And as you can see, the yarn goes through the loops of the chain, and it's to the height where we'll be on our next row. So now we are working on the wrong side, the reverse side of the work. And if you are again working in the usual way, you will just chain 3 and turn at the beginning of each row, at the end of each row. Chain 3, turn, just the usual simple way to do that. Okay, so now you can set the yarn that you dropped aside. And one thing, no matter what method you use of changing colors, you will need to make a couple of passes to keep your yarn untangled. Okay, sorry, dogs are playing. Now this first chain 3 corresponds with this first stitch, so we're going to work into the next stitch and place 1 double crochet in each of the next 3. And this is what we will be repeating with every row, so you'll have a total of 4 double crochets at each end for a little border. Okay, and if you want to, this is where you can place a stitch marker in the top of your chain 3, just to remind you that where you have the strand coming out, that you don't have the loop attached to it, is where you work on the same side all the way across. And you'll see what I mean when we get to the other end and work the next row. Okay, so let's move on to, now we're on row 3 of our 2-row repeat. Alright, easy, chain 2 and work around the center of your chain 5 space by placing a single crochet. So not through the chain itself, but around. And what I do is I go right into the center and I kind of pinch the other 2 sides off, and that helps my placement stay centered, so I don't have to fiddle too much later on by sliding back and forth. Okay, so chain 2 again and work 1 cluster into the single crochet. Chain 2, single crochet around that chain 5 space, just like we did. Chain 2 again, cluster in the single crochet, and that is your repeat all the way across. Chain 2, single crochet around that chain 5 space, chain 2, cluster into the next single crochet. Okay, so finish that sequence all the way across, and when you get towards the end, you will chain 2 and work your single crochet around the last chain 5 space, and I will meet you there. Okay, the last chain 5 space. And here I am at the end of row 3, working on the wrong side of the work. Okay, so now we're getting that alternating look where we have the cluster on the right side and then the wrong side, right side, wrong side. And that's how it will work out with this particular 2-row repeat, which is really nice because the chain tends to blend in, and then you've got that kind of that contrasting textural effect with having the clusters showing on the right side every other row, wrong side every other row, so it gives a little bit more dimension to that. Okay, so to finish row 3, you've completed your last single crochet into that chain 5 space, and now just chain 2 and place 1 double crochet in each of the last 4. And the last will be the top of your turning chain. Okay. Both loops. And now we're going to draw up another loop nice and tall as we did on row 1, but then this time instead of connecting with our color B yarn, we're going to start working from the opposite end. So if you want to put the stitch marker back in, just to remind you that where you have the long loop is where you will turn the work after this next row to then begin working on the reverse side. But because we have 2 rows on each of the same side, we're going to stay on this wrong side that we just finished working across along. Okay, then bring it all the way down to the other end where you have that long strand coming out where your other stitch marker is. So again, if you want to color code whichever end you have a long strand coming out with that color, that's where you work across the same side that you just finished from the previous row. And your second colored stitch marker at the other end where you have the long loop, that's where you will turn and work on the other side. Okay, so now we are going to take the stitch marker out briefly, and then go up to the top of your chain 3, yarn over and bring that loop through, and then now we'll go right back into pattern and work your beginning a chain 3, okay, and 1 double crochet in each of the next 3. So now we're going to be repeating row 2 again, and that is the easy chain 5 row. So it's a very easy 2-row repeat, and that's why with something that's an easy stitch pattern, you can just really have fun playing around with color and practicing this technique just to make a simple stitch even a little bit more exciting if you choose, or you can just work with a solid color as mentioned, or a variegated, or whatever you like. And I think it's just such a pretty little pattern that it looks just fine as it is, you know. Okay. And now again for row 2, that is our chain 5 row, so you just chain 5, single crochet into the top of the cluster. So you're skipping over this entire section with the 2 chains, single crochet and 2 chains, skip that, and into the top of the cluster, that elongated stitch at the top, work 1 single crochet, chain 5, again jump over, single crochet into the next cluster, chain 5, single crochet into the next cluster, and repeat that all the way across. I will meet you at the last cluster, and again we'll work that other end together. I'll show you how we reconnect and change the yarns at that end as well. Okay, see you there. I'm back at the end of our first repeat row of row 2, the chain 5 and single crochet row. I've placed the last single crochet into my last cluster. So as we did before, we're going to chain 5 again, skip over to the set of 4 double crochets and place 1 double crochet in each, and when we get to the end, that's where we will pull through our color A again, okay, right here. So now where we have the long strand and we drop the yarn, now these ends will switch. So I have my color-coded stitch marker for that to remind myself. Alright, but now let's first complete this last stitch. Take the stitch marker out where the stitch is with the long loop. That reminds me this is where we will now turn and work on the reversed side for the next 2 rows. Okay, so again, begin your double crochet as usual, pulling through the first 2 loops. Then now take your yarn and just bring that down a little bit so it's easier to work with. Bring the loop down, place the loop over top of your hook as a yarn over, and then pull it through the 2 loops on your hook, okay, to complete your last double crochet. Now you're going to turn your work, and this is where we will carry up the yarn we dropped. Now you're going to take the color B from the previous row to carry up, so you go from back to front over top of the yarn you are now working with, and make your first chain, and again for the second chain, back to front over top, make your chain 2, and then one last time, back to front over top, chain 3, and now you can set that yarn aside. So now I'm going to place 1 double crochet in each of the next 3. The chain 3 counts for this first double crochet, so don't accidentally work into that, but you work into the next stitch and 1 into each of the next 2. Okay? And then you can place your stitch marker, if you like, at the top of that chain 3 to remind yourself where your strand comes out without the loop is where you will then come back and work across on the same side of the row that you were working now. Okay, so then you just go ahead and complete the pattern across. This one, row 3 now, is our repeat row of the chain 2, single crochet around the chain 5 space, chain 2, and cluster into the single crochet. Chain 2, single crochet around the chain 5 space, chain 2, cluster into the single crochet, and that is your 2-row repeat for repeating row 3, the second row of our 2-row repeat. Repeat rows 2 and 3, 2 and 3 over and over again. All right, chain 2, single crochet around the chain 5 space. You can slide it one way or the other if it's not exactly centered. Chain 2 again, cluster into the next single crochet. Okay, work that across, and I will meet you after your cluster into the last single crochet. We'll work that end together, and I'll show you how we reconnect at the other side. Okay, I am at the end of our repeat row 3 now with the clusters, chain 2, single crochets. I've stopped at my last cluster. Now we'll finish the rest together. Chain 2, work that single crochet around the center of the chain 5 space, and again chain 2, mirroring exactly what we did at the other end. And now you just work 1 double crochet in each of the last 4 double crochets, and that turning chain 3 at the end does count as mentioned as your last double crochet. So work into the top 2 stitches, complete that. Now you pull up a long chain, and there is my color-coded stitch marker to remind me where I have the long loop is where we will turn and then work the other side after this next row again. Okay, so you can see it's really starting to take shape into the lovely pattern. All right, so now remember we do 2 rows on the right side, 2 rows on the wrong side. So you can tell we're back on the right side again by your stitch pattern. So you bring your work all the way down. So now it's time to work across that same right side from right to left now. Okay, so now we go to the top of your chain 3, and unfortunately mine got a little smushed down. So when you're carrying up your yarn, just be extra careful not to let your chains get over tightened. There we go. Fit that through and yarn over, pull through, and now work your chain 3 to begin. These 3 chains correspond with the 3 chains below, and then you work 1 double crochet in each of the next 3 double crochets. 1, 2, 3. So we're back to row 2 of our 2-row repeat, which is our chain 5. You can see that from the previous color B on the row 2 rows down. Okay, so you just chain 5 again, jump over, single crochet into the top of the cluster, chain 5, single crochet in the cluster, chain 5, single crochet in the cluster all the way across. Okay, and again when you get to the other end you have the loop, so now you know you will turn your work. You will reconnect as we did before, beginning the first half of your double crochet, and the last portion to finish you pull the loop through to complete that stitch, turn your work, and then because we have the loop, that's where we carry up color B that we will be dropping now on the opposite side. The loop is where you turn the work, the long strand is where you work across the same side. Okay, so you repeat this process over and over and repeat rows 2 and 3. You can rewind if you like to at any point. See that again. So I'm going to go ahead and continue working these 2 row repeats, changing my colors to my desired height from top to bottom if it's a wrap going across your back, or if you're wearing it as a scarf coming down your body, that will be your width. Okay? And then end on row 2, that's the chain 5 single crochet, chain 5 single crochet row. Then we're going to finish the bottom edge with an extended version of row 3 with the cluster stitches, and then we will go back around to what is your top edging and just put a really nice simple border to bring it all together along that edge too. And now let's work those borders with the yarn that I have left. We'll see how close I get with that. I'll also show you how to clean up those side edges if you like, and then add the fringe. And now we are on the wrong side of the work, and we're going to do a similar stitch as row 3 as we have been doing. And if you are doing the two-tone effect, it is up to you. That you may either, if you want, switch colors. So this is going to be your bottom, right? Okay, so you can switch colors back to whichever you are using as your color A, doing the cluster stitches and have that bordering your edge, or you can stay with the same color that you used for our last row, row 2. And you can end it in that, whatever you like. And now, instead of chaining 3, we're going to chain 4 as our first triple crochet. Turn your work, place 1 triple or treble crochet as they're also called into each of the next 3 double crochets. Okay. So you start by yarning over twice, inserting your hook into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, 2, and 2 into each stitch. Okay? And now, instead of chaining 2, we're going to chain 3, half double crochet around the center of that chain 5 space instead of the single crochet that we've been doing. Now chain 3 again, and in the next single crochet, instead of working a 2 double crochet cluster, we are going to work a 3 triple crochet cluster. So it's like working a triple crochet but into cluster form. So we're going to yarn over twice, insert your hook into the single crochet, yarn over, pull up a loop. You have 4 loops on your hook. Yarn over, pull through the first 2. Now again, yarn over, pull through the next 2. That leaves 2 loops on your hook. And for each of the next 2 portions of the cluster to make up the 3 triple crochet cluster, you will add 1 more loop on your hook for each of the next 2. Okay, so again, yarn over twice, insert your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through the next 2, and see, now you have 3 loops on your hook. 1 more time, yarn over twice, insert your hook into the same stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through the first 2, yarn over, pull through the next 2, that leaves 4 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through all 4 loops. And now chain 3 again, half double crochet into the center of the next chain 5 space, chain 3 again, and into the next single crochet, work another 3 triple crochet cluster. That's a mouthful. Alright, yarn over twice, insert the hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, and make sure those loops are nice and tall to the height of a triple crochet, but not to where there's too much slack either. Okay, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through the next 2. We're going to repeat that 2 more times. Yarn over twice, insert your hook into the same stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, 3 loops now. One more time, yarn over twice, insert your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through the first 2, yarn over through the next 2, and yarn over, pull through all 4 loops on your hook, chain 3, half double crochet around that center chain 5 space, and that is all you repeat all the way across. Okay, so let's do that together one more time. Okay, easy stitch, just extended stitches of what we've been doing. Alright, so again, chain 3, and now we're up to the next single crochet, which lines up with our cluster from the previous row down here. Yarn over twice, insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over through 2. Repeat that 2 more times. Yarn over twice, insert your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over through 2, through 2. 3 loops now. Again, one more time, yarn over twice, pull up a loop, through 2, through 2, and now yarn over through all 4, chain 3, half double crochet around the chain 5 space. I will meet you at the last group of stitches at the end of this long wrap, right up to, wow, here we go. I will meet you right up to the last cluster, where that it lines up with the last cluster at the last single crochet, and we'll work that in together. Alright, I will see you at the end of our bottom border row. And here I am at the end of our finishing bottom border row, and if you haven't guessed already, to finish the rest, go ahead and chain 3, place 1 half double crochet around that last chain 5 space, chain 3 again, and place 1 triple crochet in each of the last 4 double crochets, the last being the top of your turning chain 3 that counts as your last double. Alright, so do your yarn over twice, work your triples just like you did at the other end, and the last one. And before you cut your yarn, before you fasten off, I would go through across this last row and make sure that you have placed each cluster and each half double crochet, have all your chain 3s in between, all the way across. Okay, and then you can adjust the center half double crochet into the center of the chain 5 space as you go along if you need to, or you can do that if you're going to give a light steaming, which I suggest. And even if you don't want to steam it, depending on the fiber that you're using, you can just take a spray bottle with warm water and give it a nice mist, dampen it enough, smooth it out with your hands, let it air dry, pin it in areas if you need to keep that shape. It's going to be up to you, your judgment on that, and again the type of yarn you're using, how easily it relaxes. Okay, and now keep this on the right side of your work, okay, and rotate it so you are along the side edge. So now you can decide if you like the edge as it is. I think it makes a pretty clean edge. Doesn't necessarily need anything else. If your edge is looking a little more rough than what you would like, then you may, if you want, at the end of here to clean up this edge a little bit, chain 1 to make a little bit of a turn, and just slip stitch into each stitch along the edge, and I would say just go through the back loop of each of your loops, the loop that's farthest away from you. Okay, so in each stitch all the way up that side, and that's just going to clean up your edge just a little bit if you like. Well, you can see that, and that's what it will look like. And if you need to chain 2 to make that corner, you can do that too. Make sure you don't over tighten those. Keep the slip stitches nice and full like the rest of your stitches to retain that drape and keep it from being over tightened. So you can do that whether you put fringe on or not. Just gives a nice clean edge. But if you are putting on fringe, then you can certainly leave it as it is. Okay, and because the fringe is going to cover that up for the most part. And then what is left of this teal, that medium blue, my contrasting color, I'm going to go ahead, cut my yarn, and then keeping it on the right side now, then we're going to reattach up to the top and then work another little border across this edge. Okay, so I need to grab some scissors and I'll be right back and we'll finish up this edge also. Oh, but if you did stay with the same yarn or you're using one color, then you don't need to cut your yarn at all unless you don't want to do the slip stitch. So if you like it as is, you can cut and then reattach, or work the slip stitch up this side and then in the same color work all the way across. And then when you get to the other side, you'll just chain 1 or 2 again for the corner on this other side. Okay, when you get to the edge of this top border, and then do your chain and then just work the slip stitch in each slip stitch all the way along this side, and then just slip stitch to join in the last stitch at the end. Fasten off, put in a good little knot, and sew in your ends on there. Okay, so I will be right back. And now I'm back with all the right tools, my color B, ready to reconnect to the very top of the double crochet from where we first began, that beginning foundation chain, and from where our beginning slip knot came out of. Still on the right side of the work, all I did was rotate it around. And now I'm going to turn my work to the reverse side for just a minute, only to connect with my new yarn. The tail end away from me, I'm going to insert my hook, bring that through, chain 1 to lock it in, and then now turn my work, and we're going to begin with 1/2 double crochet into that same beginning stitch. All right, and into the next stitch place, which is the top of the next double crochet, place 1 single crochet and 1 double crochet into the same stitch. Skip the next double crochet into the next, again work 1 single crochet and 1 double crochet, making sure you are not over tightening your stitches in any way. You want to keep that nice and drapey. Right now we're just going to skip the chain and jump over to the first upside down single crochet. And all we're going to do all the way across into every single crochet and into the top of every cluster, work 1 single crochet and double crochet all the way across. Alright, so the top of the single crochet, work 1 single and 1 double. Okay, into the top of the next cluster, 1 single and 1 double, and that's your repeat all the way across. into the top of each single crochet, double crochet, and into the top of every cluster, single crochet and double crochet. So repeat that across. I will meet you at the other end and we'll finish the last together. I'm back at the end of our finishing top edge. I've already worked the last single and double crochet into the last single crochet. I just jump on over to the last set of 4 double crochets at the end, and in the first, place 1 single crochet and 1 double crochet. Skip the next. In the second to last, 1 single, 1 double, and into the top of your turning chain, that beginning chain, place 1 half double crochet, just like we did at the beginning, to finish that edge off. There we go. Alright, so now just cut your end, fasten off, sew in all your ends, place your fringe along the edge if you so choose, and give it a nice little steam or just a gentle wet blocking to open the stitches up a little, relax them, straighten out even the side edges if you need to, make it all nice and pretty and uniform. Okay, I like that. That's just simple, you know, just a very simple little top edging, gives a nice finished cohesive look to bring it all together. I think in this case the bottom would have been real pretty too, done in the darker color, but this is all I had left and I knew I would not have enough, and I had plenty of the lighter blue, so that's what I went with. And as far as fringe goes, I cut my yarn. I used a DVD case and the short side because I knew I was not going to have enough left to do really long fringe to go along 4 strands for each of my 25 rows all the way across. So that is 100 wraps per side. So I start out thinking, okay, maybe I had enough for three strands each, and then I had a little bit left, and I wound up having just enough with a little tiny bit left to spare, just in case I cut one wrong or I came up short. So how I'm placing them as along each side, where I have my double crochets along the edge on each row. So each double crochet consists of what would be 3 chains, 3 stitches to make up the double crochet. So I went right in the center and I inserted my hook through the front and the back loop of the double crochet or the chain, and I just cut my fringe just like you normally do, folded it in half, grab the yarn. You can go with a larger hook to make that easier, but not so large where it's going to stretch out the stitch. Then I even them up, pull one side down a little bit if I need to, just to even those sides, and then I give it a little bit of a twist, not super tight, but just enough to pull that through. I double check, make sure everybody's even. Sometimes I'll just pull one strand or another to get them as even as possible, which means less cutting at the end. And I decided to go through the stitch instead of around the entire stitch. I go through the 2 loops instead of around the double crochet like I often do, just because this is more open and drapey and the ends are more loose. With this particular yarn that I used, that they may be closer together and may have a little more substance and body depending on the yarn that you use. So you could do either or depending on what looks right to you. But I started out by going around the entire stitch and just pulled that stitch out and was gaping down a little bit more than what I would like to give a nice clean finished edge. So by going through the stitch and going with the same hook size, it did not stretch it out, and it gave enough of a base to where it helped to anchor the fringe. So I just have 2 more to go, but I'm going to flip it over and just give you a little close-up. Now this is the right side, and then once I flip it back over, then I see if there are any that are loose, maybe need a little more tightening. I always hold my fingers down on the base where the knot is and give it a tug, so again I don't overstretch the stitch that it is attached to. Don't want to stretch that out. And I just went along, followed where the row ended, and if it was a little closer together from one to the next in some areas, I just kind of eyeballed that and placed it where it looked pretty balanced and pretty centered. And yeah, that was that. So I will block it or steam it a little bit, and this yarn is so silky it's not going to need much, but just to make sure before I do the final trim on the ends of the fringe. You can see they're a little bit uneven, and that's okay. They're never going to be perfect, but I want them as close as possible, and that way it's kind of like wetting your hair before you get it cut to make sure everything is kind of straight across and even. Okay, and here's the rest for the other side that I need to then attach on that side, and this was my end that I need to still sew in, but I do recommend that you sew yours in first. I just want to get this done so I could show you this portion of it. And yeah, give it a nice little trim, little haircut, and you are all set to wear your wrap convertible scarf, however you made it, however you choose to wear it. All right, my fiber friends, I do believe this is another wrap or scarf for this episode. Take care, everyone. Thanks so much for being here. Please let me know what you think, and if you make it in the comments below, I certainly appreciate that. And until next time, okay, I will see you soon. Bye for now.